Good. So, thank you very much, everyone, for coming. It's a pleasure to see some faces that I know and also some new faces. So, welcome, everybody. My name is Ryan Wheeler, and I'm the director at the English Alternative, and I'm a teacher here too. I've been with English Alternative for 7 years, and yeah, it's a wonderful place to work. I have great colleagues like Barbara and Daniel and my partner Romy. And yeah, today we are here to speak to a very special guest, Conrad. Conrad, would you like to give your own introduction? That would be really helpful.
Sure.
Thank you so much.
My name is Conrad Schindler. I'm a language learning coach, whatever that means. So I'd like to get down to understand how things work, and because language learning was a difficulty for me when in school, I learned how to learn, and now I want to teach it to other people, and I've identified the most common mistakes and ways how to do that, and I've been doing that for several years now, and I really enjoy it. That's why I started the eighth language now, like eight, this many.
Wow.
So I really like languages, and it's a pleasure to be here today.
Just for everybody's knowledge, what are those 8 languages? Can you quickly go through them?
German, English, French, Japanese, Vietnamese, Thai, Esperanto, and Mandarin or Chinese is the eighth.
Wow. I think your last one may be the biggest difficulty, or is that the hardest one to learn?
It's not the hardest to learn depending on the goal,
Okay.
because my goal is not to learn 60,000 Chinese signs.
Uh-huh.
My goal is to be able to speak, so that makes it a lot easier.
That's a really nice way to look at it. I guess that's part of what you will talk about when we get to the meat of the topic. Okay, so everyone, I will do my best to speak as clearly and understandably as possible, and I'm sure Conrad will too. If you have any questions or anything to contribute, yeah, please understand and appreciate that not everybody here is a native speaker of English, and so try to speak slowly and clearly. That would be great. All right, so um, I have a question for everybody, and feel free to join in and answer. We want this webinar to be as interactive as possible because it makes it more fun, and I think you'll get more out of it too. So, um, what what are your experiences with learning a language? So, what is your feeling when you go to learn your foreign language that you want to learn? I can give you a little bit of a start from my own personal experience. So I moved to Germany 7 years ago, and everybody I spoke to said, "Oh, German is such a hard language. You will take a long time to learn German." So I came to Germany with a big fear of learning the language, and I put it off and put it off. But I found something very interesting happen, and that was that the more time I spent around my German speaking friends and listening to them speak German, the more I felt comfortable with the language. And something was happening in my brain without me doing any work, without me learning the language. And I guess that's the basis behind English Alternative, and why we do what we do and how we do what we do. But my initial my first introduction to learning a language was very difficult. I was scared, and I didn't want to. But I found that it just worked. Something happened. My brain did something in the background while I was listening. Okay, so that was my experience with learning a language. Does anybody have anything they would like to share? Don't be shy. Does anyone want to say anything?
Can I then?
Oh,
Okay, I'm not. So, anybody talking? I don't know.
okay, I think somebody
Oh,
hadn't muted themselves and didn't realize.
thank you. So, I moved to Germany 6 years ago, and I had some experience in English, learning English, and some experience in learning German, but at the same time, I had no opportunities to speak both languages. And only when I started to use German in my daily life, not on the daily basis, only then I realized, oh, it really works. I can say something in German. And the same was with English. We had already one webinar where I was a guest, actually, and I talked about my experience in learning English. And what I can say, only with EnglischAlternativ, I realized it's really possible to speak English, not only read and listen to, but really speak and just live the language. So I can say that, so we need to live, to experience the language, and then it will work. So
Thank you, Barbara. Cool. Okay. Right, if nobody else has anything else to add, I have another question for you all. What do you think is keeping you or stopping you from being confident or feeling safe in the language you want to speak? What is stopping you from achieving the goal of speaking the language you want to speak? Does anyone want to answer? Marcus.
I think for me, it's mainly a little bit of fear and a little bit of structure, because I started learning mostly all languages at school, and I've been studying abroad, so in Sweden. And there it was, at the beginning, it was a little bit of fear to start speaking, but then I got used to it because I had to. And right now, to keep me updated in English, I'm looking English movies.
Are you watching
a lot?
idea. Yeah.
But I tried to learn Italian, and there I was missing structure, so it was not easy for me to do it by myself. I was looking for some structure. We tried a VHS course, but it didn't really work. And I also think that it's important to go abroad and have to speak the language, that you are forced to speak.
That's a really important point, and I think there's something in that idea of being forced to speak or speaking it consistently. I like to say it's speaking it consistently.
Yeah, and making mistakes is also important.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Great. Thank you for your answer. And sorry, I don't know your name.
Oh, Barbara.
Barbara. Nice to meet you. Good. Okay. Does anybody else have a comment about that question? So what is stopping you? So for Barbara, it was fear of speaking. Does anyone have any fears of speaking right now? That's okay. That's all right if nobody wants to answer. I have another question for you. One more question, and then we'll start talking. What is the next step you think you may need to take to achieve your goal in your language? So what is the next step? Maybe you know it. Maybe you're not sure what the next step needs to be. But what do you think the next step is for you to achieve your goal of language proficiency or language acquisition? Does anyone want to answer? Daniel.
Nobody wants to speak, so I speak. Sorry, I'm taking the chance. So my next step for improving my Russian, because Russian is the language that I'm improving on right now. My next step that I would see is picking up a Russian book and just throwing myself into it and reading whatever I can understand and just read it page by page. And that's what I did with other languages, with Spanish, for example, and that changed so many things without, like, I was only able to understand maybe 20% of the first page of Paulo Coelho's book. Como el río que fluye. So Como el río que fluye is the book. And I didn't know so much Spanish at the time, but I was able to pick up on the storyline, even with those 20%. And somehow I got a hang of it, and I just kept reading and reading. And in the end, I could say I have read the book, and in the process, my proficiency increased by so much. From the feeling, I felt so much more confident. So with Russian, I would say this is my next step to do that. Not knowing a lot of Russian, but that would be the next thing.
And Daniel, what do you think it is about reading that helps you so much?
Being able to go back and to really dig deep into a word or a phrase that I don't understand, and really try to wrap my mind around it, my head around it, and try to understand what it really means. So taking some quality time with the language itself. So I think that's what it is.
Sure. So a little bit of analysis of the language, and sort of looking at perhaps the syntax and grammar, and getting a deeper understanding of what's happening.
Yes, and also other languages, like maybe Russian, I don't know so much, but from my experience in the past with Spanish, for example, they just say things differently. And the feeling is so interesting of that, falling in love with the language, of how they structure things, what the picture they use, what phrases they use, and this actually means this. Wow, so that's what it is.
Daniel, that falling in love with the language is something that I think we can both talk about a lot, because we've both done it. I fell in love with German somehow, and I think you've fallen in love with Spanish as well. But I think that's so important, is to try your best to find those interesting parts in the language and really fall in love with it. It's if you love the language, you can't stop learning it. Yeah. Okay. Good. Thank you so much. I won't ask any more questions right now. I'll let you have a break, but I will ask Conrad a question. And one of the things that I thought when I started learning German was, this language is so big. There is so much to learn. How am I ever going to get to fluency? How am I ever going to understand and be able to speak fluent German? And for some people in the room, it may be English or Russian. But where do you start? How do you tackle such a big thing, or how do you approach such a big thing as learning a language?
The obvious answer would be you start at the beginning and you keep going. It's kind of like when your apartment is a mess. Where do you start? You start wherever you are. And with a language, maybe let's put out some numbers. So the statistics say that English has something like 600,000 words or 1 million words. So it's a huge number. But every day, English only needs about 500 words. And then we go up from there. So to be able to speak in a normal day-to-day situation, 500 words is usually enough. That's not a lot. And depending on the setting where you are, the people you speak with, you will have a small vocabulary that you use. For example, if I want to talk about this instrument in the back, I have difficulties actually naming this instrument in English because there's so many ways. and so few people actually know it. And my English vocabulary when it comes to instruments is very limited because I don't use it. I don't need it. So that's why if you want to start with a language, then choose the topics you want to talk about, and it will be so much easier to actually find the words because you want to learn them and you want to speak about that. And that's what I mean. You start where you are and you start at the beginning. You start with the things that you actually need and take one step at a time and be happy about every step that you take and every success that you have. Because you can always compare yourself with the huge number of words that you still haven't learned. But maybe your goal was never to learn every word. Maybe your goal was to be able to speak to that cute girl in the coffee shop around the corner. Or maybe your goal was to go to Italy and order an espresso at the bar and joke with the bartender. Maybe that was the goal. And depending on your goal, you need a different set of vocabulary. Like I said earlier with Chinese, my goal is not to learn all of the signs. I don't want to be able to write them. I can probably just use the keyboard on my phone, maybe read them a little bit, and that is enough for me. So it depends on the goal, how huge a language would actually be, and depending on where you want to go. And to get started and to a point where you already have the first successes, that is actually quite fast if you know where you want to go and you know how to count your successes.
That's a great tip. So start with small steps. Okay, very good. Thanks, Conrad. You reminded me of a book that helped me a lot when I was learning German too, and that was a thematic dictionary. There are many thematic dictionaries for English too, and a thematic dictionary groups words and also phrases in some of them into topics. So for Dietland, maybe there is a section on coffee. Okay, so if that's her topic of interest, then there's a thematic section about coffee, and it gives you a lot of different words related to that particular theme or topic, and also some phrases that you can learn too. So it helps you by giving you what you will need, what you will use. So yeah, I recommend a thematic dictionary in the language of your choice. Okay. My next question, Conrad, is what you mentioned goals a little bit, but what do people actually need to succeed?
So a goal is the first thing that I always suggest, because many people, they say they want to learn a language, but they don't know how far they actually want to go. They don't know what they need. And if you're not clear about that, it makes it a little bit more difficult, especially for the subconsciousness, for the brain. Because if I say I want to be able to have a conversation, and we are already having a conversation, Ryan and me. We can even have a conversation on the level of, my name is Conrad, what's your name? And then the brain will make a check, and that means I've already had a conversation. So on what level do you want to have a conversation? How long is it supposed to take? I had a client, he's a teenager, and he said he wanted to be able to talk 1 hour in English with his friend. And shortly after we started working together, he sent me a video where he was talking to the camera in English for 6 minutes. And I thought, if he can talk alone for 6 minutes, then an hour of conversation is gonna be easy for him. So he needs larger goals to stay motivated so that he can achieve the next step and the next step. So that's why I say, make it set your goal in a way where right now you feel like it's gonna take some time to actually achieve it. Like, I want to be able to go on a holiday to the United States, travel around it with a car or motorcycle, talk to the people there, and maybe discuss politics, or maybe better not. something like that, and find out how they live, and maybe be invited to their home and talk to about their traditions, something like that, that feels further off, or that you want to be able to write a book or a poem in the language and feel like it's on a high level. So that is something, when it comes to goals, make them big while also celebrating every step of the way, so that you compare yourself with yourself when you started learning and how far you've come. So that's just about the goal.
So should I? Sorry, Conrad, to interrupt. Should I set smaller goals as well, or simply one big goal?
Actually, I would go as far as have several goals, a few large ones. So, for example, when I started Vietnamese, my goal was to be able to talk to my possible future in-laws, the parents of my girlfriend at that time. But after some time, we separated, and I still continued to learn the language. And the goal to speak with her parents was no longer something that would drive me, but I fell in love with the language, as Daniel said. And I wanted to be able to talk to my Vietnamese teacher in Vietnam. I wanted to be able to travel around Vietnam with a motorcycle and talk to the people. And that was another goal that kept me going. So the large goal should be something that keeps you going, and the smaller goals would be something like, okay, I've already achieved something, like I can express myself in the topic of music quite well. Like I can talk about the music that I like. What is the next topic where I can push myself a little bit so that I can become better at that, because I haven't talked about it yet? That would be an example. For example, I could set my goal, I want to be able to talk about musical instruments a lot better, and then find someone who can help me with that, because they actually know what that instrument is and then know the lingo, the vocabulary for that. That could be another goal. So yes, have several goals, as many as you like, as long as it keeps you going.
Okay, great. Thanks, Conrad. Just before we continue on to the next point, does anybody have any questions about goals and language? Okay, good.
Can I?
Yeah, sure, Baba.
So my question would be, so for example, English or another language is my first foreign language, as I don't really understand how big it can be. So which goal can I set? Because sometimes it looks like, okay, I have a book for beginners, for example, and I think, okay, that's my goal. When I can read some text in this book, it's fine for me. But as a beginner, people could not really understand which goals they can set. What can help to set the real goal, the best goal that keeps me going?
So if we talk about books or classes or language levels, I'm not that much of a fan, because I think the ultimate goal of a language is experiences. It means I want to be able to talk to people. Maybe I want to flirt with people. Maybe I want to consume the media, watch a movie, watch a series on Netflix in that language, read a book in that language. Maybe I want to be able, for Japanese, the main reason was I wanted to be able to read Japanese comics in the target language, in the native language, in Japanese. That was my goal back then for that language, and the reason why I even started learning Japanese. For Thai, it is actually to watch Thai comedies, because I think they have a great sense of humor. And so those are things that keep me going. And what kind of experiences do you want to have with that language? If we talk about levels, I would say yes, that could be something. You want to reach C1 level, for example, that should be quite fluent. I would set it as a side goal, because overall, I think it's better to have a goal that's not on a level of academia, of this is where I need to take a test, but on a level of I want to be able to comfortably talk with a person, with a native person, maybe in their country, and have an experience with that language.
Thank you.
I hope that answered the question well enough.
Thanks, Conrad. Yeah, I really like your point about it not being attached to an academic type goal. I think when it's experiential and there is emotion attached to it, so at the end, or when I achieve my goal, it will give me a sense of being able, it will give me an ability that I can really use. I can, yeah, as you said, flirt with that girl or guy, and that's an emotional thing. It's a much more significant, it's a much bigger I guess magnet to your goal than just C1. Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay, good. So goals are the first one. What else is important?
I would say another thing is to have habits that help you continue to go. So Vietnamese is something that I learned with 15 minutes a day and 1 hour a week of conversation. And that's it. And it took me 3 years with that so that I could travel through Vietnam and talk with people. But that's not a lot. And of course, the more time someone spends, especially when they feel like, okay, today I'm on a roll, I feel confident with the language, I want to do more. The more condensed, compact I have it, the faster it is to actually learn the language. And I was asked in Vietnam how long I've been living there, because people that live there usually have such a hard time with the language, and I was able to do it completely online. So having a habit of doing a little bit every day that keeps you going is going to help you a lot more. And then having some days where you feel more motivated to do more, that is something I really recommend. So usually they say it takes 2 weeks, 3 weeks to form a habit and then to keep going. And it makes it a lot easier. And I would also say when it comes to habits, have the goal for that habit small enough that you can do something every day where you feel like, okay, I'm really tired, I want to go to bed, I forgot to do what I set out to do. I wanted to do like read a page of that Russian book, for example. I didn't do it. What is the smallest thing that I can still do so that I can actually honor that I want to keep this habit, so that I can still do it even though I really want to sleep? And that is the minimum you should be doing every day, and then do a little bit more when you feel like, oh, this is great, and I want to research that, I want to know more about that grammatical structure, I want to learn more about that word, and at the same time having a minimum that you say you will do every day, and having that habit, and so that it becomes like brushing your teeth. I hope everyone does that every day anyway. So doing that, that really helps you get further in the language.
Okay, and what is your tip for actually creating a new habit? Because it's easier said than done.
That's true. So there's several things. So one thing that can help is having someone you tell them that you want to form that habit and that keeps asking you. That's the accountability partner. That's a very standard move. For the more awake people, listen to yourself when you tell yourself that you're not going to do it that day. So I'm sometimes very surprised when I hear myself think. The things that I have in my head is like, oh, not today, I don't feel like it. Oh, wait, I said I was going to do it. So why am I talking myself out of it? And then realize, okay, I know that if I do it now, I will feel better tomorrow because I told myself I would do it. If I don't do it now, I will feel guilty today and guilty tomorrow. And if I just compare these feelings, I say, okay, then I will do it today. And that's why I said, make it a small thing so that the sacrifice is achievable. It's like doing one push-up, just a little bit, just so that you know you've done something. And then you do another push-up the next day, or you do a little bit more the next day. And that's something how to build a habit. You can start very small, really small, so that just to get the habit at all. And listen to yourself, think. And then with time, you can build on that. You can say, okay, I'm starting with 5 minutes every day, just 5 minutes. And then I will slowly grow it to 15 minutes. And sometimes maybe I will feel like I've set a goal. I want to go to the United States or to Russia. I really want to get better, and I have a project time of 2 months. And for that, I will do something for 1 hour a day. And then that is also possible. And start with small things. And actually, they even say that if you want to build a habit, it's sometimes easier to just attach it to some habit that you already have, like brushing your teeth, like other things that you already do. When you have breakfast, that every day before you have breakfast, you will do the 5 minutes because you need to earn the breakfast, for example. And then you have always a time where you will do that. Of course, only if you eat breakfast, and if you don't eat breakfast but only lunch, something like that, then that's a different topic.
I'll do 2 hours of German homework before I have breakfast, and then I just don't have breakfast every day. Great tips there, Conrad. Thank you. Yeah, really cool. I like that. Setting or forming habits, I think, is a challenge, but yeah, it's certainly helpful. Consistency is the key when learning a language, I believe. Great. Do you have another idea for us, and what will help us succeed in learning our language?
So, of course, the best thing is to have small successes that you can see and feel. That's why I think the best way, or a very good way, is to keep having conversations, small conversations, where you can feel like, okay, I can already express this. I can talk with a person, and there are topics that I'm already comfortable with. So when you start a language, of course, the first things you want to know is, how do I say hello? How do I say, what's your name? How are you? And once you have that down, people very quickly will say, that's normal, I have it, it's very easy. What they don't do is they don't give themselves credit. You have already achieved something. This is something you are allowed to celebrate, and you're allowed to celebrate that often because you want to keep going. And every success that you have should be a small victory for you. So once you have a new topic that you started, and you made a mistake, and you realized, okay, I have learned from my mistake and I'm getting better, then you can already celebrate that. And the problem might be that someone tries to compare themselves to an ideal version, a very fluent native speaker, and while they are still very at the beginning of a language. For example, I don't need to start with Shakespeare to understand English, because that's high level. It's even Old English. That's not something that I start with. I start with something that is fun for me and helps me feel confident in continuing. So it's the saying would be, choose your battles wisely. Choose where you want to go next, and compare yourself with yourself. Sometimes, actually it can help if you write down the things that you have already achieved or that you already know. For example, it could be something like a diary that you every day you write a little bit in the target language. And if you have that, then after 1 month or 2 months, you have 3 sentences that you write every day, and you compare yourself with what did I write at the very beginning, how did I write, and you compare yourself and you look at how you write today, then you will already see the improvement. Because it's small improvements, it sometimes feels like you might be stuck. But if you compare yourself with how you were a month before, a year before, then you will see the difference. I did that with Vietnamese, and my Vietnamese teacher, she actually corrected all of my my diary, and she saw the first 3 or 4 entries, the first 3 or 4 days that I wrote something, and she said, oh, how's that ever gonna help? But after 2 weeks, she was already impressed how much better I have become, because I was writing and I was expressing myself in the language and was thinking, how can I express myself? How can I say the things that I want to say? And with that, I became better and better. And when she corrected it, I took the feedback and I got back to it. Oh, okay, so this is how I say it. This is how it's different from how I think in German compared to Vietnamese or the target language, which makes it interesting. So why do they say it like this? Why are the adjectives after the word and not before, and stuff like that? So that's also something. Compare yourself with how you were before. Count your successes, celebrate them if you can. And if you feel like you're not motivated anymore, especially look where you came from and take the time.
Okay, great. So goals, habits, then motivation. My question you nearly answered then at the end. I think you probably have answered it, but what happens when we do feel a drop in motivation? Perhaps we have compared ourselves to the other person we saw in the webinar. They were speaking so clearly and easily, and we've lost motivation. What do we do then?
That's exactly it. If you feel like you've lost your motivation because you compare yourself, that's one thing. Then you can write a list, 50 things that I've already achieved in that language. And if you feel like 50 things is too much, then write 100.
Okay. Oops. You've been muted, Conrad. I'm sorry about that. I tried to mute the person who just entered, and you jumped up on the list, so I muted you instead. So sorry, it wasn't deliberate. Okay, good. Daniel, do you want to say something?
A question, follow-up question for Conrad. Now, what do you do on the day that you missed your practice? How do you pick yourself up? You just like you had a 10-day streak, and day 11 you only find out on day 12. You didn't do it.
I've had that. So my training coach said 1 time missing is okay, 2 times is a streak. So if you miss 1 day, I would say have a big heart with yourself. It's okay to miss a day accidentally. If you do it deliberately because you keep telling yourself stuff, then make sure you do the things that you set out to do. If you miss it, make sure you find out why you missed it and then do it again, and then keep working on the habit again. Sometimes it actually helps to write down, okay, did I do it today? Yes. Did I do it today? Yes. And then you have the check marks in the calendar. I did it, I did it, I did it, I did it, I did it. I've done that with not eating any sweets. And I've realized that if I do it like that and I give myself points every time I don't eat sweets, then it makes me think more about, oh, on that day I really didn't eat, or I ate some there. and it visualizes it. So it helps me make the streak become longer just because I write it down, which is kind of weird. Just because I see a green color that through my calendar, it helps me actually do that.
Mm.
So yes, I still have it. I've been writing a diary for 3 years now in several languages. And I still see that sometimes I miss actually several days because it was very stressful or for whatever reason. And then I think, okay, I set out, I want to write a diary every day. I start again and I keep going. And the more you do that, the more the habit will get stronger and stronger. And if you miss one day, then it's completely fine. You just keep going. Does that help you? Does that answer the question?
Yes, you just keep going. I got it. Yeah.
Thanks a lot, guys. Okay, does anybody else have any questions? Feel free to put your hand up if you do, and I'll come to you. I have one more question. You talked about self-talk. How important is self-talk with learning a language, and how can we use or improve our self-talk?
So self-talk is usually the things that keeps people from doing what they want to do. It usually keeps them smaller. It's the little voice that tells them, oh, you're not good enough and stuff like that. So it helps to just realize what you're saying to yourself all the time. That already can help you put a stop to it. And sometimes it's really funny to see because usually what you hear might not be what you hope you hear. A way to change that is to actually figure out where's that voice coming from? Who is it coming from? Is it a male voice? Is it a female voice? Is it from the right? Is it from the left, up, down? And to change the location and to change the pitch, it could be a higher voice, it could be a lower voice, it could be a really fast voice, it could be a slow voice. And the funny thing is, it is very difficult to criticize yourself when you hear yourself using a very slow voice. It's just not interesting. So if you do that with your inner voice, it will help you to become more relaxed about it. And then you can, of course, think about what is it that you want to tell yourself. Like, just do it. Keep going. You can do it. I want someone to acknowledge me for the things that I've already done. So you can choose, for example, do you want to motivate yourself by you did it, or do you want to say to yourself, I did it? Just the I or the you, and feel which one is more impactful for you. And then you choose the form that is better for you. And that is a very simple thing how to do it. Something that I actually also tell my clients is meditation. I know some people swear by it, some people don't know what the hocus pocus is all about. The idea would be to have a time in your day where you try to calm your mind and whatever voice is in your head, to just let it go by and have some emptiness in your head for at least, let's say, a few seconds, and then the next thought comes, and then you choose the next seconds again where you want to have some calmness. And that feeling can actually also help when you feel stressed, so that you remember what that feeling was of, okay, when I meditate, I feel like this. Ah, yeah, that's a nice feeling. That's what I want now. It helps me to learn again, especially when sometimes it feels like everything is too much. And I like that people can remember the feeling of emptiness of curiosity at that point. So we started with inner voice. Just change the voice to a point where it doesn't feel as bad anymore. Remember what you want to tell yourself in the way that feels the best. And then remember the feeling that helps you learn the best or feel the best, and then continue with that.
Okay, great. Daniela?
Does it help? It's a serious question because it was on my mind the past minutes. It's really serious. Does it help to translate the inner voice into your target language? I'm not kidding. It's my question.
Does it help to translate the inner voice?
Like the things that you want to keep telling yourself, like you start noticing, okay, I'm telling myself something that I'm talking myself out of, that I want to learn the language. Now instantly translate that into the target language, and like, now I'm on the positive side of things. Like I'm doing something for that, like, or would you say that doesn't work?
I'm not sure. I would think that if you do that you translate your inner voice, you're already doing something for your target language at that point. Yeah. So that is already helpful. It could also be that I find out that depending on the language, it's a different feeling comes with the language. And that can make it quite funny, actually. So if you try to keep yourself from doing what you want to do in Italian or in Spanish, and it feels different than when you say it in German or in English. So yeah, just try it and feel which one, how it works, and which one is better.
Okay.
I wouldn't say that there's a definite answer to that.
All right.
Just play with it.
Can I share the story?
Sure.
So it was a very interesting point that when I change the language of my inner voice, then I feel myself a little bit different. And sometimes when I'm angry, I speak German in my head. It sounds a little bit harder, and some thoughts that I want to tell another people or something like that, they are really in German, but not in Russian, so not in my mother language. And I find it's very interesting. And then I notice that, okay, so I can think in German, it's good, but I would like to have better thoughts. And then I change it. And I start to think something more interesting and beautiful and something like that. And I'm trying to think beautiful things in German too. And it's really interesting experience. So, and I think that it helped me to speak German better.
Thanks, Sarah. Very good. Very good. Okay. Great. Conrad, just to make this a nice clean circle, I want to come back to the first comment that was mentioned, and that was fear. What do we do when we're afraid of speaking our language?
The first thing would be to acknowledge it, because many people don't like to have fear, so they try to not pay attention to it. It already helps to realize that there is something, and to not do anything about it, but to just simply acknowledge, okay, this is something that I feel uncomfortable about, and to have a goal already helps to realize whether that fear is helpful or not. Because some fears are helpful or were at some time, and some are not. And the easy way is then to say, okay, I have my goal, I want to achieve this, I will find a way to do it. Of course, coaching can also help against the fears. If you want the fastest way would be to simply find out what am I afraid about, and to test whether that is really true. So I say sometimes we are afraid that if we make a mistake, someone will laugh, and then we will die alone. Which is, of course, not happening in most cases. You can try it, but even if they laugh, it doesn't happen. And if I make a mistake in a language, people are still interested to find out how can I say what I want to say so that the other person understands me. So that's where the goal comes in. A Japanese friend of mine once said that if your heart is strong, I will make the other person understand. And I think that's very beautiful and very true. So even if you're afraid, have a goal that is larger, and maybe goal is too coach speak. It's too weird. If your intention is to make sure the other person understands what you're saying, it can already help you to make the fear less strong, so that the fear is weaker. The fear, the pictures inside your head are smaller. They go to the side, something like that. That can already help you get over that. And in the end, the easiest way, one of the easiest ways is to simply test out whether your fear comes true when you do it. And you can also, if the fear is to make a mistake, find someone you're comfortable with to make that mistake with. Like, have a person that don't do it with a foreigner or a person you don't know, with a stranger. Do it with someone you feel comfortable with, and then make mistakes and find out what they are, and sometimes just laugh about them.
Of course. Laughter is the best medicine.
Yes, it is.
Good. Thank you, Conrad. And can you tell us, for any of those interested, how could you personally help them in their language journey?
One of the first things I usually do is find out what is keeping them from learning the language that they want to learn. And if it comes to English, of course, they can, you're probably the better address, because I just give them the skills. They still need to find someone to learn English with. And when they have these fears, I have coaching, and one coaching session is usually enough to make sure the fear is gone. And that is probably the best that I can do.
Very efficient.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Okay, so Conrad, perhaps you could quickly tell us a little bit about your company and what it is behind it, what it is there. So is it just based on fears when speaking a language? Is there something else that you and your team does?
My team is me, so
okay.
My company is as large as I am.
Okay.
Of course, we also talk about setting goals to make sure motivation is there, to take some time. So what can be a good goal for that person, or several goals? We can talk about how can we make sure the habit stays, so that we have some accountability. That would be the mastermind group. We can talk about how can I remember words and phrases better, so some learning techniques that would help there. And then fear, resolving the fear is another aspect. And those are the four things that I offer, depending on what is needed.
Okay, very good. Thank you so much. And of course, as you said, Conrad, we can help with the other part of it. So you mentioned at the start that consistency is key, and that around 15 minutes a day and 1 hour a week is nearly exactly what we try to do with our clients. And yeah, I think if you have a need, please come to us for English or German as well. and we can help you with that consistency. So I want to thank everybody for coming, and of course, Conrad, thank you so much for your fantastic advice, tips, and information that you shared with us. And I will hand over to Vara to say a final.
So the only thing I would like to say is anybody who has questions or would like to share some ideas or stories, it would be nice to hear you. Actually, there are a lot of people who have already learned English with us and who are our different customers and new people also there. So
acknowledge your fear and just speak.
Just speak.
You're with friends here.
So nobody. Okay, so it was.
Oh, hang on. I think.
Yeah, I can say something.
You nice.
Yeah, because
thank you, Baba.
I've seen a lot of parallels with my work because I'm a personal trainer, and there you also have the topic with consistency. So I recommend training twice a week, and I also recommend documenting your training so you can have the so-called dopamine effect, because you see your progress and you feel the success. And I think learning a language is a bit similar to getting more in shape or getting stronger. And I think this is really interesting to get these parallels.
Right.
That's
yeah. Thanks a lot, Barbara.
So nice. And okay, then I share my story once again. So I have some experience with German and English. And what about the fears to speak? I think that one exercise helps me is when I try to read some text loudly. So because I have noted that people have these fears because they don't pronounce different words in the language. And when you try to read loud, then you notice, okay, so I need to move all the things, and then I get the sound. So, and when you read a lot, then it's a habit to speak this language, and it's very easy to pronounce different words. And then you hear, okay, it sounds like that, and when I meet people I can do the same sound and they understand me. So something like that. And actually the Daniel gave us, for the whole team, a great book. It's German and English conversations, and you can read English and then you have the translation and you can realize, okay, it's fun. So I can say the same things in another language. So when I read this book loud, for me, it helps me to speak both languages, German and English. So Daniel, would you like to say something?
First of all, no, I'm smiling because I'm just writing Ashish on the side. He's turning on his camera. I'm just happy to see him again. I met him on the plane to India, and Ashish made my plane experience like it was several hours in a snap. We were talking the whole way. And he made he made sure that I will arrive safely in Mumbai and make my way. So thank you again, Ashish. It's nice to see you back. I'm just happy to see you.
Yeah, it was really nice to see you also, Daniel. So yeah, like you said, we met on the plane to Mumbai, from Frankfurt to Mumbai. And yeah, it was a really interesting ride. We shared a lot of things. I told him, like, yeah, I'm actually, to tell you about my background, I'm an international student in Germany. I come from Nepal. If you don't know, it's a little country in South Asia between China and India. So for those who don't know, and I am in Germany since last 2 years. And yeah, I've been, of course, trying to learn German. and we happened to talk on the plane, and Daniel told me how he was working on something like this at the English alternative program. And yeah, I already had a little background of how things would be working. And today, yeah, I got an invite for him to join this, and I was just like trying to get in the vibes, how things work around here. And yeah, to be honest, like a lot of things that was said here today made uh, good sense to me, because I also went through a lot of difficulties during my language learning. And yeah, I remember one thing that I'd like to share here today in my German language learning journey. I told this to Daniel also, and he was really impressed with this. So, uh, yeah, for the Germans in here, there's a show called Verstehen Sie Spaß, if you know it, right? So I actually did a lot of my German learning from that show. So how I came onto that is I loved humor, like good humor, like not like making people hot for fun or something, but the way they do it here. Actually, it was a show called the Just for Laughs Gags. That is, I think, a Canadian show. And I was thinking, I was a really big fan of the show, and I was thinking, might they have something like this in Germany that I could use to learn the language? And yeah, there was this show called Verstehen Sie Spaß. And since the last 2 years, I have watched, I don't know, over 1,000 episodes now. So what it helps me is um it connects me with my passion. Like I really love to watch that show whenever I feel like too much fried in my head with all the work and stuff. And then I watch an episode of it. It's really funny also. And the best thing about that is those are two people really talking like they do in real life. Like, in movies and everywhere else, you get scripted things and it's a lot easier to understand. But when people talk in real life, that that has actually helped me a lot to improve my German, right? So I find myself sometimes using expressions and things that I don't know, I picked up from some episode of Verstehen Sie Spaß. And when I talk to some Germans, they're really impressed. Okay, how do you know that? Yeah, how long have you been living here? And yeah, I don't know, uh, yeah, that is what I wanted to share.
That's very good.
And but one thing that Conrad was telling about consistency, I think I lack that also. But I'm really passionate about learning, and I really want to learn. So I think I have been going on, and I have not stopped. But the consistency, doing this many hours or this many minutes every day, I lack that kind of stuff. Otherwise, in 2 years, I would have made definitely a lot more progress than I have today. Yeah. So yeah, it was really nice to hear out this conversation. I really got some tips also that I could use to in my language learning journey. And yeah, thank you
Thanks
so
very
much, Daniel, for connecting me here.
Thank you, Ashish,
Thank you for
sharing.
pushing me to share. Thank you.
Thanks for sharing, Ashish.
Yeah.
You, Ashish.
It's great.
Oh, great, really great. Thank you a lot. And what I would like to say is that I have collected the emails, and when so I will send a thank you message once again with the recording of this video. Then you can use it for you once again and to watch what was very important. Any questions for now? Not really. So then I'm thank you for this evening and that you were with us tonight, and I hope we will see each other once again by our next webinar, and join us in social media also, Facebook, Instagram, everywhere. We'll be there. We will appreciate this very much. So that's it for today, I think.
Thank you for organizing this webinar, Vara.
Thank you for holding the webinar.
Great. Thanks, guys. Take care.
Thank you for inviting me.
Thanks,
Thank
Conrad.
you.